everyone. I'm Maya Carnes. I'm in the class of 2022, and I'm one of the heads of Black Student Union. Today, we are so grateful to welcome Farajii Muhammad back to middle school and upper school this morning, as his time and wisdom has been very beneficial to our community in the past and now. He's a parent at Friends School and has helped students and faculty plan our eco-justice retreat in the fall of 2019, where he taught about the fundamentals of assets-based community development. He's also helped to plan our eco-justice webinar earlier this winter. Mr. Muhammad has worked in the field of youth development for decades. He currently serves as the Youth Empowerment Coordinator for the American Friends Service Committee. Beyond his dedication to youth development, Mr. Muhammad also hosts a daily talk show, For the Culture with Farajii, for WEAA Radio, where he has discussed topics ranging from eco-justice to disparities in the Baltimore City school system to police reform, in addition to the various perspectives throughout the Baltimore community discussing politics, education, money, community, and more. Today, he will be discussing intersections of race, class, and the environment in Baltimore and opportunities for students to engage for positive change. Mr. Muhammad plans to leave plenty of time for Q&A, so please use the chat for the Q&A to submit questions during the webinar for him to answer towards the end of our time together this morning. Again, we are very grateful to have the opportunity to hear from you, Mr. Muhammad, and for all the ways that you have engaged with students and friends and across Baltimore.
Maya, thank you so much. First and foremost, good morning. I want to thank everyone from Friends for the opportunity to once again be a part of a very, very important discussion and most importantly, an important cause, which is environmental justice. I want to thank Catherine and Joshua and Sarah and just the whole team. Mr. McNeil, thank you so much for inviting me back to talk with the students once again about this very, very important discussion. As Maya mentioned, my son is a student at Friends. He is in the first grade, so my face will be around for a little while. And you know, as part of our decision to make sure he gets to Friends, it was important for us to make sure he's growing up in a place, in a space where he understands the very elements of what it means to of freedom, justice, and equality, life, liberty, and a pursuit of happiness. I wanted him to be able to have that foundation as a 7-year-old. So I'm very, very excited to see how he shapes and grows in that space. But this morning, I am just incredibly honored to be able to offer just a little bit of the insight that I have gained over years of working in the community in the city of Baltimore, talking with decision makers across the city and around the state as we discuss the bigger issues of environmental justice. I think that it is so important that we understand that all of these things that we have been experiencing from COVID-19 and all of that has exposed is really an effect to a much larger cause. And so today, my hope is that we can break down just some of the ideas and then have a discussion about it. I'm really looking forward to the question and answer period because, you know, I feel like I'm a teacher. I have my little board here. I'm going to try to, you know, use this as much as I can to share with you. But more importantly, I want to make sure that the ideas that we share are ideas that really resonate with you and that, you know, make you to think, and most importantly, to get you activated in this whole process of being a part of the work of eco-justice. If you did not know, this year, the theme for Earth Day, which is Thursday, April the 22nd. And so this year, the theme for Earth Day is Restore Our Earth. On earthday.org, you can find resources and opportunities to learn more about climate change and environmental justice and some of the things that are happening at home and abroad in this country and around the world about what folks are doing to bring a certain level of awareness about the importance of restoring the earth. They are going to be having a 3-day celebration starting on the 20th of next week to teach and empower and inspire more people, particularly young people, to see the environment as it should be seen, which is a living organism that deserves to be protected. I want to kind of break down a little bit about where we are in this whole process. Let's first look at the EPA. If you're not familiar with the EPA, it's the Environmental Protection Agency. And in a nutshell, the mission of the EPA is to protect and preserve the environment through the enforcement of laws and rules established by the government. This is the government's arm to, this is their agent, the government's agency, to make sure that Americans are treating the environment with justice and equity. And I think it's important that we should know that the EPA, the administrator of the EPA, is a Black man by the name of Michael Regan. And Michael Regan has been doing work in the area of environmental justice. And so he was appointed the administrator by President Biden. And this is part of President Biden's commitment to racial justice, environmental justice, and to have a different view of the environment. There's a saying that says this, that no one is closer to the solution of that, let me make sure I'm saying it correctly, that those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. Let me just repeat that. Those closest to the problem are closest to the solution. So to have a Black man who has been exposed to some level of environmental racism, environmental injustice, and to have him to be at the head of an environmental agency, he's able to bring some experience to the table, I believe, that would benefit all. But if you're closer to if you're close to that problem, then you are close to that solution because you know the ins and outs of that problem. So I want you to keep that in mind. Now, some people would ask the question, why do we need to protect the environment? I mean, it looks fine to me. Why are there still all of this effort to protect the environment? Some would even ask, why is there a celebration of Earth Day? Why do we need to have a dedicated day to celebrate a time to celebrate the Earth? It looks fine to me. And I will say, no, it's not fine. Matter of fact, there are 3 points that I want to lay out here very quickly when it comes to the environment and how we should understand it, because just as much as we believe that it's fine, that it's all is working well, the reality is that the Earth is suffering. And as a result of the Earth suffering, we suffer. So those 3 things that I want to speak to you about are relationships, cause and effect, and something I call the decision and power of us. Relationships, cause and effect, and the decision and power of us. I want to say something, I want to share with you something from a man who I have great love and respect for. I had to really grow into understanding who he is and his thinking. And as I have grown in my service as an organizer, working with young people, working with adults, working in the city, just doing work of social justice work, I have come to grow and to love Dr. Martin Luther King. Not in a very, very surface way, but to really love the way he thought. His strategy and his view of the world have truly inspired me. And I have taken on that view in some ways because I think he has a very balanced view of how things should go. Dr. King said it like this. It really boils down to this. This is Dr. King talking. He said that all life is interrelated. It really boils down to this, that all life is interrelated. Now, he also, I want you to keep that in mind, but he also said something else that I thought was really, really powerful. And he often talked about the ecosystem of justice. Now, here is Dr. King, who is a civil rights leader, who talked about everything from voting to talking about policy around war. His great passion was to speak about the struggle of the poor. He talked about racism, militarism. He talked about all of the isms that have divided this country. But few people actually see, and until, you have to kind of dig for it a little bit, but few people don't put Dr. King as being an environmental justice advocate. He was an ecological thinker. So the way he said things, he said it with the intention of helping us to understand relationships. So when he talked about this ecosystem of justice, why did he use such language? This is why I believe, and this is just my humble opinion, so you can have your own view of this as well. But one of the things that I've gained about studying nature and studying peoples, there are a lot of similarities. And I think Dr. King saw that as well. He taught us that nature teaches us a lot about relationships, how organism A engages and interacts with organism B, and how that organism B affects the life of organism C. Well, that principle is the basis of the idea of this ecosystem of justice, because justice means to be fair in your dealings with one another. Justice means that everyone is on an equal footing. Justice means balance and harmony. So one's experience affects another's experience. And this is why I think that Dr. King talked about this ecosystem of justice. When you are an environmental justice advocate, or you are an environmental justice organizer, you understand relationships and how things are supposed to work with one another, serve with one another, and ultimately benefit each other. I'm gonna say that again. When you start to think like an environmental justice advocate or organizer, or when you have an ecological thinking, then you are able to key in on relationships of how things work with one another, how things serve one another, and ultimately how things grow and benefit and gain with one another. That's the beauty of ecological thinking. So the environmental justice advocate helps us to see not just the gain of one thing or one organism, but the benefit for all. He or she, they have the ability to see the small details of the interaction, but also the big picture of the relationship. Why is this important? Because in the world we live in today, you and I are taught to only think about one person. Can anyone guess who that one person is? Ourselves. We are taught to think that way. And we have been taught to think less about the us and more about the me. This is why social media is so popular, because it gives us this big place for us to talk about how funny I am, how sexy I am, how strong I am. But there is a consequence for that mentality. Now, how did we get there? Because a lot of times, for the benefit of money, status, and other things that we think that are truly valuable, that some may think are valuable, we make the decision to negate other people to just see ourselves. And we're going to talk a little bit more about this later. But This is a time period where there's more focus on the I and less focus on the we, more focus on the me and less focus on the us. Saul Alinsky, who is a community organizer, he's a writer, he wrote a book called Rules for Radicals for Community Organizers. And he said something that I thought was really, really powerful. He said in his book, quote, "A major revolution to be won in the immediate future is the dissipation, which means the dissolving or the breakdown of man's illusion that his own welfare can be separate from that of all others." He said, as long as man is shackled to this myth, so long will the human spirit languish. So if we're shackled to the myth of seeing ourselves outside of the family that we're a part of, the household that we live in, the community that household resides in, the city that community is situated in, if we see ourselves outside of that, then we're kind of going on a downward spiral. And so instead of being an ecosystem of justice, we start to do ourselves harm and become unjust to each other and to ourselves. So change in anything that you want to see in this world, folks, and justice never comes because of the I. Change and justice comes because of the we. So regardless of whether you're Black or you're white, Asian, Latino, Native American, regardless of your culture, to only think about yourself as an individual is not a natural state for us to be in. That is something that we have to be, that is a thinking that has been conditioned to us for many, many years. The human experience is built on the relationship of interrelatedness and interconnectedness. I'm gonna say that again. The human experience, the progress of the human experience, when we make the great gains, whether it's in policy, whether it's in technology, whether it's in social interactions, it's built on interconnectedness. But something has happened along the way where our humanity, our interrelatedness, our interconnectedness with each other and with the earth has been severed and disrupted. What has happened? In our pursuit to exploit the natural resources of the land, in our pursuit to take advantage of this ecosystem for self-gain, in our pursuit to see ourselves as better than nature, rather than as a part of nature, we have gone astray and we have become disconnected. So that leads me to the cause and effect. That was relationships. Well, let's look at this cause and effect a little bit more. These are the causes that has led to the effect of where we are now. The relationship of cause and effect is mathematical, it's scientific, and it's very logical. Yet, it is one of the most challenging relationships of human interactions. We know that if you did something today, it will affect your tomorrow. We know that if something was done yesterday, it affects today. Very simple to understand, but hard to really embrace. So if we know that these things are happening, then what is going on? How is it that in 2021, we are dealing with an ecological environmental justice crisis? There was a story that was done about West Baltimore. And I'm just going to be a few minutes longer and then we will close it down. There was a story done about West Baltimore in the Bay Journal. And it said, quote, in the neighborhood straddling Maryland Route 26 in West Baltimore, just north of the Mondawmin Mall, residents grapple daily, check this out, with dirty air, vehicle-choked roads, potentially hazardous industrial plants, and a scourge of lead-tainted homes. How does one neighborhood in Baltimore City in 2021 is dealing with dirty air, vehicle-choked roads, hazardous industrial plants, and a scourge of lead-tainted homes? Now, for the ecological thinker that you and I are, is that just? That people have to live under these conditions? Is that fair? No. Is that right? No. But somehow, these residents are dealing with this in 2021. How in 2021 you have to deal with dirty air? How in 2021 do you know that there are still communities in Baltimore and around this country, Flint, Michigan, that had to deal with the issue of dirty water for years? How is that possible? Well, the reason I say the reason I'm asking these questions, because as ecological thinkers, we have to make a decision. And this is why it's important for us to understand the relationship of cause and effect, because in nature, like in life, cause and effect matter. Now, what serves as the foundation for this dynamic relationship to exist is one decision or a set of decisions. And this leads me to my last point of why it's important for us to become informed and knowledgeable ecological thinkers, so that way we can make decisions to empower not just ourselves, but to empower each other, that brings balance and harmony back to the ecosystem where justice is present. Our decision to not see the earth and the environment as important, our decision to not take this case of environmental racism seriously, has led to the very effects of being in the place that we are in right now, where we have this type of situation in Baltimore City in 2021, where a neighborhood is dealing with the issue of clean air, clean water, dirty water, and lead-tainted homes. My question is, how did you have lead-tainted homes? Who built the homes? You mean to tell me that in this day and time, with all of our technology and all of our innovation, that you can't build homes without lead? Or is it that your decision and that the will of the builders of these homes didn't care about the people that were going to live in the homes? They didn't care enough to want to change that, to say, no, we can't do this project here. We got to do something different. What I'm asking you to do today, as we wrap up, is I want you to make a commitment as an ecological thinker. I want you to help to make and bring harmony and balance and justice to where we are. Because we are living in a world, and you may have heard this from your parents, from your teachers, and from people, from the adults around you. But we are living in a world that is imbalanced. And the reason that the world is imbalanced, and the reason that our relationships are dysfunctional, and the reason why the earth is, I believe, crying out for something better, is because we have been making, and I'm saying we as man and woman, we have been making decisions that have been contrary to the preservation of life. Whether it's life coming from the ground or life walking above ground. So we have gotten to this place where we are fighting very real forces that just as much as you would want to believe that everybody cares about the environment, there is a group of people who say, no, we don't, because I want to build this community. I want to put this plant here. Do you know that in rural communities around this country, there are power plants and there are pollution plants, plants that emit a lot of air pollution. And in these plants, they might be building things, they might be breaking things apart, they're using, they're doing all these things, but in very, very close proximity to these plants, to power plants and to these plants that emit pollution, there are communities. And most of those communities are Black and Brown, Latino, and Native American communities. And so they built these communities around plants that are emitting power and causing all types of health issues, pollution that lead to lung cancer. And then they keep building. And because people are looking for homes, people are looking for places to live. And we don't have enough time to talk about how people are always in dire straits looking for just to feel like they are people of worth and value and dignity. They move into these places and they suffer in silence. And this is a part of the American way, quote unquote. This is a part of the culture, unfortunately. And we have to do something to change that. Because when we decide that we are going to not think of ourselves, and when we really decide that we're going to help other people, then watch the quality of life for all of us start to improve. I'm gonna go back to Saul Alinsky because he said something else. This is gonna lead me to my final point of why we have power as us. He said, remember, once you organize people around something as commonly agreed upon as pollution, then an organized people is on the move. From there, it's a short and natural step to political pollution, to Pentagon pollution. So if we start to organize as ecological thinkers, we start to organize right now and start to help and say to ourselves, enough is enough. Here in the city of Baltimore, the deputy mayor, Mayor Brandon Scott, just chose his deputy mayor, who serves as the deputy mayor for the city. And she's going to look at, her name is Faith Leach, and she's going to be dealing with equity, health, and human services, and oversee agencies dealing primarily with quality of life issues such as recreations and parks, library services, and the city's COVID-19 public health response. And so if you have a person in a position of power, what's stopping us as ecological thinkers, as environmental justice advocates and organizers from saying, Deputy Mayor Leach, we need a conversation. As students of the Friends School, we need to have a discussion about the quality of life of Baltimoreans. And we need to talk about it, not on a surface level, but we as students are organized and we have the power, and more importantly, we have the heart, the mind, and the spirit to make sure that we start to establish an ecosystem of justice in the city of Baltimore, because enough is enough. Imagine if that's said to the deputy mayor, and she goes back to the mayor and says, Mr. Mayor, I spoke to a group of students from the Friends School of Baltimore, and they gave me a presentation about how we can change the environmental injustice of what's happening in our parks, and they gave me some ideas on how we can bring some environmental equity into my strategies and plans. Can we have them to advise us? Can we talk to them and bring them on as partners? Imagine how that conversation, imagine how those things can add to and open up the door for us to be in a better place in our city of Baltimore. Just imagine. So as I close today, I want you to really think about where you are. And you might be saying to yourself, well, I'm too young for this. I don't need to worry about this. But remember the principle of cause and effect, that what you do today affects your tomorrow. So the decisions and the actions or the inactions that we take today will affect the quality of life, the city and the state and the country that we live in tomorrow. People always tell me, they always say, well, man, somebody else will deal with it, or, why are you worried about it? Because I want to be in the fight to ensure that my 7-year-old son and my 1-year-old daughter will have a better place to live than I did when I was their age. I wanted them to be able to say, my dad helped to make quality of life better, not just for my family, but he helped to make the quality of life better for other families. And you have the opportunity to do that today. Here at Friends, I've been working with Catherine and Joshua and just the whole team. And guess what? They're making inroads, building those relationships to ensure that something different happens in Baltimore. Don't think that you don't have the power. You just have to tap into your power. You first have to recognize that when you come together with your friends and your family and you make a decision, that you start to disrupt the old relationship of cause and effect, and you start to establish a new relationship of cause and effect. Cause and effect isn't a bad thing. It's just the principle by which these things happen. But you can create a new relationship. So imagine you at Friends, you get the ball rolling with environmental justice issues, and then other schools. You got a Calvert School, you got Roland Park, you got Bryn Mawr. They said, well, what are y'all doing at Friends? And we making sure that the city of Baltimore, and we working with the city schools, and we making sure that the city of Baltimore is in an ecosystem of justice. Imagine that. Now you have changed the dynamic. You have organized in such a way that now your power is in the organization, but your power is also in your collective will to see something better in the city of Baltimore. So with that being said, my time has certainly been well spent, and I really hope and pray that you gain something from today's presentation. But just know that you have the power to set right the past decisions, the poor decisions, to make this earth today, this place that we live in today, better tomorrow. I thank you for your time and for listening to what we have to say.
Thank you so much, Mr. Muhammad, for your insightful and engaging words. We are now going to shift into the Q&A portion of the webinar. So our first question comes from an anonymous viewer, and it reads, as an African/Asian person, I feel that as though many people of the white community have taken solutions of climate change, like veganism, to their advantage during colonization from disadvantaged groups. Is there a way to call out these people in a polite way and make them informed of what was started by people of color?
Well, you have to ask yourself the question, and that's a very good question. You have to ask yourself which battle you want to take on. Now, as I've grown in my activism and in my justice work, I had to learn to pick my battles. Are you upset that the white community has taken on something that you believe belonged to Black people, or is it more of they've not just taken it on, but kind of changed the whole thing? But here's my question. Here's the big thing. I'm a vegan, so it's a great question for me. I'm a vegan. But when you see those type of things happening, it's kind of a situation that's already out the bag. So at this point, I would highly recommend, instead of being in a space of being reactive to a situation that you can't change at this point, you get into a space of being proactive and say, okay, let me take the message of veganism to the next level. There are still a lot of Black people and people of color and Latino, and there are still a lot of people that don't understand the benefit of veganism and don't see it. And so I would focus my efforts less on, and I'm just saying, because just for your mental health and sanity, you're going to, as you grow in all of your thoughts, you're going to find yourself getting upset with a lot of people. But instead of being an upset, be in a space of, let me take this and then let me add my spin on it, but let me go out and help those who've never heard that message. Let me impart some knowledge to a group of people that never understood why it's important for us to talk about veganism. So I would take that same energy, but redirect it into a more proactive direction, because people are going to take on and they're going to do all of those things. And I get it, but at the end of the day, we are at such a place right now in our society that we can't stay in a space of being angry. We have to be in a place of being builders and innovators. And we have to go into those spaces where no one has had those conversations about health and wellness and diet. We got to go into those spaces. So I hope that helps in your understanding of it. I know you may be upset, but focus your attention on getting the message out to people that never heard that message before.
Okay, thank you, Mr. Muhammad. I'm Anna Kiefer, a sophomore here at Friends, and our next question is from Miss Smith's 7th grade advisory. They ask, in your opinion, what is the #1 thing that Mayor Scott should be focusing on when it comes to the environment in Baltimore?
The #1 thing, I've heard it for years, and I'm sure many of you probably have heard the same thing. If you live in Baltimore, you know this is a problem. Trash. Trash is a big problem. Let me tell you how big of a problem it is. Back in the day, years ago, Baltimore City had 2 trash days, right? Like at the beginning of the week and toward the end of the week. That changed. And the reason it changed is because now we have a trash day and the other day is a recycling day. The city is trying to move to a much more greener place. But that's a big issue, trash, and not just trash pickup. I used to live in the Barclay neighborhood near North Avenue. And I had one of the craziest experiences where I saw a trash truck load the trash onto the truck. And then they had that part of the truck that kind of like squeezes the trash into the truck all the way to compact the trash. But as it was squeezing the trash, the trash juices was spilling out of the bags. And terrible smell. Well, it was one of the worst smells I ever had experienced in my life. And it was dripping right into the alleyway. And it was a hot day. So I'm looking at this and I'm thinking to myself, what the heck is going on? So the trash, and then the guys on the truck, they're not even thinking about it. They're not even worried, but they just pick up the trash, move it on. But then as the truck is moving, the trash juice goes down the street. They come out of the alley, down the street, and it's like creating this trail, and it leaves this smell like you've never smelled. It's hot and the whole 9. So I thought to myself, this is absolutely insane. So trash pickup is a big thing. The man knows that. The man knows that. Here's my solution to it. There has to be a way that maybe you guys can think of it, that trash, because people use a lot of trash. In Baltimore City, we have a lot of homes in very small spaces. I don't know why they built it that way. I guess they were trying to keep the population high, but we have a lot of homes in small spaces. So that is an environmental threat in and of itself. So if you got that many homes in small spaces, small backyards, and a lot of trash, it's going to create problems. It's going to create rodent problems. It's going to create some other issues. So there has to be a very ecologically sound way of handling trash in this city. And more importantly, not just putting it on the mayor, it's important that we come up with campaigns or something to say to the people that live in the neighborhood, because this is very true. If you start throwing trash in your neighborhood, guess what you're going to, if your friend throwing the trash and you see that and you walk in and you eating something and then you, oh, I can, if he lives here, so I'll throw the trash in that neighborhood. It creates the wrong cause and effect relationship. So we got to teach people just something very simple. Put your trash in the proper receptacle so that way it can be collected in a very, very organized manner. Thank you for the question.
Thank you so much for that. Josh Cerny asked, I'm wondering if you ever feel pessimistic at times, like feeling overwhelmed with how widespread these problems are really worldwide and how deeply entrenched these harmful systems are in our society, feeling like it may not be possible for us to make the changes we need for racial, eco, and environmental justice.
Yeah. Short answer, Josh, yes. I think we all do at some point in time. We may feel like, that this may not be working. But I'm so happy that you brought up that question, because people think that you're always on, that you're always optimistic, and you're not always that way. That's not true. These things can overwhelm you. That's why I am a huge advocate of organizing. And then when you organize with the goal for low-hanging fruit. When you start to see small changes in your neighborhood or in places that you have control of, it gives you the confidence, it inspires you to go for the big stuff, right? So many times people want to jump out there and be like, I want to stop pollution in Baltimore City. No, start with what's happening in your neighborhood, something that affects you and your family right now, and then work your way up to the big things. The reason is, one, because you have to build the heart, the mind, the spirit to do this type of work, right? Because when you start doing the big stuff, that can, and somebody says, well, we're not going to help you. That can't work. This is dumb. Then it's going to diminish the little light of hope that you had in yourself and in trying to solve the problem. You don't want to diminish that light. You need to build on a light. You have, each one of us are blessed with a little light. But if we feed that light, it's like the fire, the embers of the fire. If we just keep feeding that light, just keep adding a little bit more gasoline, keep adding a little bit more that lighter fluid, it becomes a fire within. And that's the place you want to do. Start dealing with small things. That way you can build the confidence, the know-how of how to handle the big things. When organizing is very simple, as I'm gonna wrap with this, it's very simple. It's the fact that if I can start to have the skill set for the small stuff, the skill set is, learning how to plan, power mapping, the skill set of who's responsible, who's affected, to go through that process. If you can do that at about the small thing, by the time you get to the big issue, you'll be able to do it. But yes, there are going to be days where you feel like this is crazy, but that's when you take a moment, regroup. Some people call it self-care, and then you get right back into the fight. My hope is you don't give up. Most people give up. And I'm gonna just say that, not because they're bad people, but because change doesn't always happen overnight. So you have to constantly have self-talk within yourself about how committed you are to a cause to make sure that you stay with it all the way through.
Our final question comes from Parker Hollandoner, and he would like to know if we know how we got here and we know what the ideal is, as in eliminating environmental racism, what is a meaningful first step?
Meaningful first step, I love that. And you said the student name was Parker?
Yes.
Okay, awesome, thank you. Parker, what is a meaningful first step? I love that because now it tells me that you're a strategic thinker. So in organizing, there is a methodology called ABCD. It's called Assets-Based Community Development. And what assets-based community development allows you to do is to not see an issue or problem from a place of loss or a place of feeling like, of nothing, but you see the problem from a place through a lens of gain. And here's what I mean by that. So if you know that there is environmental racism, okay, so how do we work our way back? Environmental racism is very big, Parker, very, very big. So which issue that falls under environmental racism are you speaking about? You got to be clear to yourself. This is the important step. If you're not clear exactly which issue you want to address, and you just say, I'm on environmental racism, you're going to just completely wear yourself out. You got to be clear. Are you talking about lead in the homes? Are you talking about the access to clean water and clean air? Are you talking about, we're trying to stop people from living in places that are near plants, power plants and all of those things? Like, which issue? And I would say that would be the first thing. Figuring out which issue under environmental racism, under a big problem, which issue of that big problem you want to start to address. Once you have that, then you can kind of go through the steps. But you got to be clear to yourself because it makes all the difference. It helps to dictate which path you want to take, which resources you're going to need, what type of help and support you're going to need. It's going to dictate it all. And it gives you clarity of mind. Until you guys are fully able to get to a place where you can do 2 and 3 different causes at one time, don't overwhelm yourself. Start with one cause that is passionate to you, that you feel like I will always work on this cause regardless of the time. I will make the time to work on this cause. Find that cause first, and then work from that point forward. I hope that answered your question, Parker. And great question. Thank you. Do we have any other questions? Was that the final question?
That is our final question today.
Awesome.
So everybody, this concludes our webinar. Thank you, Ms. Muhammad, for speaking with us.
Absolutely. Thank you.
And providing your advice. And thank you to everybody who asked questions. And yeah, this concludes our webinar. So hopefully everybody can take advantages of some of the activities we have today for Earth Day, and enjoy the rest of your day.
Thank you, everyone. Appreciate the time.